Hi, and welcome to episode 124 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram and Periscope. And today is Sunday, November 8th, 2015. These Sundays just seem to roll around really fast. It feels like I just was sitting down and talking to you yesterday. But I have a lot to show you. I've been knitting quite a bit. I have some finished projects, plural, to show you, and some works in progress. And I also am in the midst of kind of moving my yarn and my books and all the fibery stuff kind of into one room. And so this week I worked on that a lot. Went through yarns and was pulling books off of the bookshelves, which are right next to me here. And I kind of pulled a bunch out. So watch for a little book sale that is going to happen probably this week sometime. But I also thought, since they're not kind of put away and all arranged and stuff, I pulled out kind of some of my favorites to show. I just thought that would be a little something different. So, and we have a drawing too, which I will put off to the end, just in case you didn't enter it and you're not really interested in sitting through, the random number generator. That'll be at the end. So, on to works in progress. The first thing I want to show you is the sweater that I have been working on. It didn't get much work at all the week before last, but I worked on it some this week. This is knit out of Bartlett yarns. They're Rangeley wool, which is a really nice yarn. It makes a really nice knitted fabric, but it is hard on the hands to actually knit. I was feeling a little kind of hand strain, so I think I really have to take it slow, and I'm not going to push to try to get it on, to get it finished. So the design that I'm knitting out of this yarn is the hand-to-hand cardigan by Elizabeth Zimmerman. It's available in kind of lots of different places. It was in a Spun Out. I think it's in Knit One, Knit All, Knitting Workshop maybe too. I know it was in several places. And the last time I showed it to you, I think I was kind of maybe 3/4 of the way through the sleeve. And this is going to be kind of a big kind of coat substitute. And so this is as far as I am now. So it's called the hand-to-hand because you start at the wrist and then you go, across the upper back and then down the other side. The sleeve was knit flat, and I like to sew that seam instead of doing some other method of doing garter stitch in the round, because I like how the little ridges all line up perfectly when it's sewn. And so I'm going to just kind of put this on so that you wrong arm. So it starts on this way. So then part is going to go across the back, and this is just on a needle kind of waiting. And then I've knit this part, which I don't know, I have to measure it. Looks like it's like over halfway, so maybe I have to take out a couple of ridges. I was doing this last night and I just kind of went till I was almost out of the yarn, and I thought, okay, I will measure it. So it's got a cable that goes up the middle of the sleeve, and then that cable travels across the back. And then what I'll do is I will cast on the same amount of stitches that I have here and knit back and forth, and then end up joining with the back stitches and then knitting the second sleeve down. So it's coming along. It's farther than it was the last time I showed you. It's this really pretty blue called Lake Blue, and I am working it to gauge. I think the gauge is 4 stitches to the inch. I am working that with a size 8 needle, which is 5mm. And I know I'm going to really love the sweater when it's finished. It's just, it is quite an elastic wool, so it's hard on the hands. And then I have a second project that I wanted to show you, and this is just the toe of a sock. This is Lollipop Yarns in the Autumn Amore color, and I just have a toe because I finished the first of those socks. I can't remember where I was. I think I was down on the foot somewhere the last time I showed it to you. And last week I told you that I was just feeling like I needed to plow through some of the socks that I had on the needles. Plowed through. So this is the first one, and then I just cast on for the second one. So for off the needles, that was one little thing that was kind of off the needles, but I have more socks. Last week I showed you the Arnie and Carlos, the orange one, because I don't know, somewhere I put all the ball bands with the numbers on them, and I know they all have different sort of names, but I don't know which one is which. So I finished that one off, and I think I'm not sure where I was on this one, but I finished this one off, and it's just my basic kind of toe-up sock. So now I have a pair of those, which they will be fun to have to wear. And then I have even more finished socks. The orange one, if you remember, I had started doing the parlor trick knitting where you're doing one sock inside of the other, and it was one of the orange Arnie and Carlos and one of the kind of blue and red Arnie and Carlos socks. So I had ripped them out, and then I knit the orange one up, knit them each up separately. Well, I finished the blue and red one also. So I now have 2 of these. These might be right up there with one of my favorite socks that I ever knit, ever, because I just absolutely love how the striping pattern worked up with this thicker stripe that worked right at the ankle so that I could split for the afterthought heel there, and it just is, and it just happened. The first one I just pulled from the middle of the skein, and that's how it worked up. And then the second one I did, go back and make sure that I got them matching. But I really, really love this. And this Regia feels a little bit different than the orange ones did, but neither one of them felt as nice as the Lollipop yarn. This just is so nice and smooth. It's really nice to knit, but I think these will be really fun to wear this winter. So I got through and got those done. So I feel better having sort of that many of them done. I still have kind of more socks on the needles than I want, but I can deal with that many. One of them is the hand spun pair, and then I have the second to this one, which I will probably leave as just a portable project because I like to do the stripy socks. And then I have the third Arnie and Carlos, and I think I'm maybe a couple inches down the foot of the first one of that one. So, those will probably be the ones that I kind of concentrate on next. But so it feels like kind of a weight lifted off of me that, I got some of these socks done. Okay, then for show and tell, here's where I thought I would kind of show you some of my favorite books, the ones that I reach for most often, that I have found to be kind of the most use to me. When I first started knitting, there was no YouTube. I learned most everything through books or magazine articles, and some of these kind of go back a ways, but a lot of them are from the last like 15 years. Um, the first one I'm going to show you, and they're not really in any kind of particular order, they're just kind of how they're stacked on the shelf. But this one was published way back. I'm not even sure when it was first published. I know it was out of print for a long time. It was first published in 1985. And then it was out of print for a long time. And at that point, I heard a lot about it. And then in 2004, it was reprinted. And that is Knitting in the Old Way. And this is by Priscilla Gibson Roberts. And this version with Deb Robeson of the Fleece and Fiber Source Book. She was her publishing company republished this book. So it has that kind of attention to detail, but it really covers so many things. Priscilla Gibson Roberts is quite a knitting guru. I think she's still with us. But it has so many wonderful things. Like she kind of goes through and kind of how your stitches are mounted on the needle, kind of explains all the different methods of knitting. So it's more than just a technique book. It really explains everything. It has a lot of these kind of pencil drawing illustrations, and then it goes through. Let's see if I can find a good one. And it has all these different sort of types of sweaters. So if you're somebody that says, well, I did that a couple weeks ago, what makes a Fair Isle sweater to a Norwegian sweater to a, other kind of other ethnic sweaters, this has like all the kind of little explanations and what makes them different, how to go about just starting one from scratch, the kind of charts that you need, and all of that information. And she is a very clear writer. Everything is very easy to understand, and it just goes through everything that you need to kind of plan your own sweater. This version, more than the previous one, I guess, goes through then. She added entrelac, and she added intarsia and intarsia in the round, and it's a really good book. It's kind of a nice size, and there's lots of kind of white space. It's easy to read, and the paper just feels good, and the font is very, very clear. So this one is really nice. So then the other ones that I find really, really important is, I would say that everybody needs an Elizabeth Zimmerman book. She was, when I first started out knitting, I kind of learned just like with patterns, and I didn't, have any books. And I think at one point I wanted to make socks, and somehow I just thought, well, I'll go to the library. And there were 2 knitting books in the library, and one of them was Knitting Without Tears. So this one is essential to me. I take this off the shelf and just read it. If you just need an Elizabeth Zimmerman, even if you're not going to buy it, check it out from a library, just for her philosophy of knitting. And I feel really, really fortunate that I kind of fell into that just by accident. Nobody told me to buy it or read it or anything. Of course, there's kind of new innovations and things. What was this? This was first published in what? I want to say 1971, and it's been in continuous print since. But the cover of the new ones look different than this, but I have had several of these that I end up kind of giving away to people, you know. So I am really sort of, this is my favorite Elizabeth Zimmerman book. I know a lot of people kind of like Knitting Workshop even better. And this is the kind of original Knitting Workshop. It's been redone and it has a lot more, it's more glossy and has more color pictures and stuff. But I know people who have learned to knit through using this book, and it walks you through all different kind of sweaters, how to do different raglan, different shapings and different shoulders, and it has the pie shawl in there. So anyway, I would say you need an Elizabeth Zimmerman. Either one of these would be good, or both. And then one of the books that I use, like I pull it off the shelf all the time, is, and I talk about it on here a lot too, but that is this book, which is Latvian Dreams. The author is Joyce Williams. She was a long time knitting camper. Also, she, I knew her through there. She was one of the Meg's assistants there, and she was just a really, really wonderful lady. I honestly, I think she was the best knitter that I have ever seen. Her things, her attention to detail, and her, the first time I met her, this book had been out, and I don't know, I just kind of looked at the patterns and thought, oh, I don't need a pattern book or something. And the first time I went to camp, she was wearing this Aran sweater that was beyond beautiful. It was teeny tiny gauge. She liked to knit to little gauge, like I do, and but it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The prettiest sweater I've ever seen. And I just picked up the book and went, okay, you need to sign this, because I thought, I'm not even going to look through it again, because what she has in here, I'm sure is going to teach me. And it has so much wonderful information in the front of it. It's got a whole technique section in the front. And there, see if I can say this how I want to. So there are kind of lots of different ways to do things. And I know a lot of people sort of, you can look at something and kind of engineer a different way of doing it to kind of put your own spin on things. I think a lot of people do that, and that's fine. But the sort of techniques and things that Joyce has in here are things that really, it wasn't just her trying to figure out a different way for, the sake of that, but like she did, when you're doing like an I-cord in a different color, around the edge of something, maybe if you just kind of do regular applied I-cord, you get this little blip of color. Well, she figured out, she didn't like that, and so she figured out a way so that you wouldn't get that little blip of color. She was the first one to write about knitting onto circulars. She did the fingertip up gloves. That is really the best way. They fit the best of any gloves, the shaping that she does for those. Anyway, this is a wonderful book. And this book also is really great in that in the back of it, it has all these different charts to do like mittens or sweaters or, color work in. So anyway, this one, for that technique section in the front, I pull this off all the time. The only thing about that book is that it was put together kind of in the early stages of digital photography. So the pictures in the technique section where they tried to zoom in to get close-ups are a little pixelated. I mean, now it would be so much better, but at that point, that's what the technology was. So it doesn't really matter because it's still like a really good book. So last week I talked about, or was it last week, about, or a couple weeks ago, about Stitch dictionaries. I could have pulled off like a ton of those to show you. Maybe some week I will have to like go through and kind of show all of mine. But this is the one that is currently that I really love. I mean, I love a lot of them, but this is a Japanese Stitch dictionary, which, you know, just has the like patterns and charts. You know, symbols, you usually can figure out. Description of each little chart symbol is in Japanese, but they also have kind of line drawing pictures so that you can figure out like how to do things. But I have a lot of stitched. I think maybe half of the books that I have or that I'm keeping are different kind of either cables or lace or color work, or ones from specific areas or countries. They're my favorite, that anything is possible when you have that. You know, you have knitting in the old way, or you know, or Elizabeth Zimmerman's, the EPS way of doing, you know, sweaters, and then you can put a you know, stitch pattern on things. And then the other one, which I just, you know, looked at, and it's because it seems like there's a lot of people really interested in doing color work and, you know, stranded knitting. And this is one that is really essential, and that is Knitting with Two Colors. And this is by Meg Swanson and Amy Dachin. A while, maybe 15 years ago, 12, 15 years ago, I don't know exactly when that came out, but there was a book called Knitting from Camp, Sweaters from Camp, it was. And there was a big section kind of in the front of that book, a big technique section, and it was a wonderful book. But as sometimes happens, a lot of the yarns, those were kind of all stranded sweaters, and they were using Jamieson and Smith yarns, which a few years after it was published, Jamieson and Smith discontinued just a ton of colors. So it kind of made the patterns in it, you wouldn't be able to duplicate them because you couldn't find the yarn anywhere. So that book is out of print now, but they took sort of that front technique section and put it in this book and added like newer things in here. So it is, I mean, it's a very sort of slim little book. It's 64 pages long, but it has so much information. You want to know how to do a crochet steek or any other kind of steek? It's in there. How to, you know, how different ways of holding the yarn when you're doing stranded knitting. You're going to hold them in both hands or one hand, or, you know, how to trap the yarn and, you know, so that you can catch it so it doesn't have a long float. You know, how to spit splice. And it's got a lot of color pictures. It's just really so much information in it. Last thing that we have to do for today is the drawing, and this is for the Esther Bell pattern, the Esther Bell shawl by Emily Estrada. And thank you to Emily for donating that pattern, and thank you to everybody that entered. It was so fun reading your responses about the recipes that you have learned to make or you wished you had learned to make. It made me feel like I kind of know you a little bit better. So there were 24 entries. So I'll put in from 2 to 24, and the winner is number 5. So let's go see who that is. while it loads. Okay, number 5 is crochets and knits 2. And she was talking about, she was the one I was talking about last week about her grandmother making the bread, and then she tries and she can't really get it to turn out the same. So you won. Let me know when you see this, and I will forward that on to Emily, and she will send you the shawl pattern. Thank you all for watching today. If you get a chance, come on over to the Ravelry group. If you're not a member, it's called Friends of Heartland Knits. And if you get a chance, maybe write and tell me and everybody else kind of what are your favorite knitting books. What's or specific ones, or maybe kind of the type of book that you like to collect or buy, or anyway, it would be fun hearing from you. It's okay if you don't. We have a really like quiet group, and that's okay with me because I'm a pretty quiet person anyway. But it's fun to get to know you. I know I watch podcasts and I kind of never write on Ravelry, or if it's easier to do it on Instagram, that's good too, because actually I'm probably on Instagram more than I'm on Ravelry. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. If you get a chance, it would be great to hear from you. And the podcast is on iTunes and YouTube. The YouTube channel is Heartland Knits, 2 words. And then I also embed the YouTube video on the website, which is heartlandknits.blogspot.com. And then I also embed it in the thread on the Ravelry group. So lots of places to watch. And until I see you next week, remember to look. I'm going to post kind of the books that I am going to sell. How I'm going to do it. I might just take a picture of them and then list all of them, but I will probably do that on Instagram and then also put it in the Ravelry group. So be watching for that. And until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.